grateful to the IPPs for being kind enough and understanding enough to cooperate with us to try to revise the contract conditions that they have been working on in the past many years. Upfront tariffs, cost plus tariffs in the past, not acceptable anymore. I strongly believe that the government of Pakistan should not be the single purchaser of power in the future. Power needs to be generated and bought by the private sector amongst themselves. There needs to be an exchange of power, the CTBCM, competitive markets that we want to introduce, that we've been wanting to do for the past 25 years now as a country and have not been able to do so. I'd like to congratulate Pakistan that this afternoon the Cabinet Committee on Energy would be hopefully approving the formation of the first independent system market operator that would then enable these transactions to start happening over the next 6 to 12 months, inshallah. And that will be a very big breakthrough. वो CPPA, वो government का खरीदना IPPs या government से वो ख़त्म ही हो जाएगा system. So everybody will buy and everybody will produce and everybody will buy whatever energy they require in the future at the best terms and conditions, and that's where competition will kick in. Competition will bring down the prices of power in the future. CPPA can't do that. The government of Pakistan is not supposed to be doing that. We cannot do that. So we'll create an environment where market operations on the power generation side and the buying side would start. The other very important part of reforms is the distribution companies. We have to put a stop to the political economy that is revolving around distribution. Unbelievable, unacceptable, it's not sustainable. We would have had 600 billion rupees extra to fund institutions like NUST if the distribution companies were not to be making these losses. That's 600 billion rupees a year. That's serious money. So this kind of, so what's going to happen? Am I going to put the discos in order? No, I can't. I'm going to put in place good professional board members in place, and those boards would be responsible. Who is the additional secretary or the joint secretary of my ministry or me? Have we ever been in the business of running distribution companies or utility companies? No. It's not my job. It was not my job to run PTCL when I was a federal minister and I was just, 32 years old. And I realized it then that PTCL needs to be privatized and the government needs to come out of the business of doing businesses. And we deregulated the sector at that time. PTCL was supposed to have been privatized back in the 1980s. We did it after 20 years. This is exactly what we'll have to do with the distribution companies. So they have to be privatized. So in the next 5 years, inshallah, by the end of next year, 3 distribution companies would have been privatized. 2 distribution companies which give you a loss of over 150 billion rupees a year would have been privatized through the concession agreement model. This is serious reform. Bringing in distribution companies, boards and board of members, एक सिफारिश भी नहीं ली पिछले 6 महीने में किसी XCN के ट्रांसफर की, SC के ट्रांसफर. Everybody on the political side is maybe unhappy with us. All the MNs and the MPs, because they're not being provided proper customer care services by the existing XCNs and SCs. They're not to blame, so they want their own SC to be able to resolve the issues of the people. Our complaint systems don't work. 118 does not work. That will have to work. So the customer care is going to be, we are going to focus on that, and the discos will have to be privatized, and we are going to make sure that in the next 5 years, if we have the support of the whole of the government, people are shy of saying and admitting. And they keep asking us these snide questions as to why is the army involved in this, and why is the establishment and the security establishment helping you with this and that. Why should not they help us? If they have a position of strength, they're doing it for the country. They're doing it as a country as a whole of the government approach is being used as part of the task forces that we formed in Islamabad today. So we are all proud of the fact that everybody is contributing to this cause, and we are coming up with good, practical, logic-based, realistic kind of the solutions that will not hurt the private sector and the business environment of this country in the future. So that's the distribution part of it. The transmission, we've had serious transmission constraints. You have cheap power in the south that cannot be transmitted to the north, to the load centers. Whereas is saal, there were coal plants that were much cheaper to run, and we have been wasting over 30 billion rupees a month for not being able to dispatch the power being produced by cheaper plants up to the load centers. Our entire planning was wonky. Why? Because NTDC's board was not working. We just put in a board where a very senior advisor at LUMS is now chairing the board of NTDC, and we brought in proper professionals, sectoral experts into this board, and they've given us a whole new idea of and the way to work around the transmission system. The National Transmission Company, in the next 2 or 3 days after cabinet approval, we've worked everything out. The Prime Minister has given permission. Just the cabinet formality is left. So the National Transmission Company has been broken up into 3 different pieces, into 3 entities. One is going to be taking care of the future projects, a very slim, trim company of not more than 60 to 70 professionals who will conceive the projects, who will look at the constraints, who will come up with new projects, who will implement those through an outsourcing model and hand it over to the existing NTDC, which would be converted into a company called NGC Asset. And they'll be responsible for managing the entire transmission system of this country at the in a most cost-effective manner. Who's going to fund all these constraints? Right now, as we speak, I need more than $2.5 billion US to remove the 4 most important constraints that the national transmission has. Rahim Yar Khan Matiari, Ghazi Barotha Faisalabad transmission line, reactive power, and the battery storage, which will ensure no curtailment of renewable energy that's happening in the south of this country. These 4 projects, we were begging people. We begged the Saudis, we begged everybody in this world to come and invest into those projects, and we were going to give them a very high rate of return on their equity. That wasn't the way to go about it. So we talked to our development partners like the Asian Development Bank, like the World Bank, like GIZ and others. When they sat down and looked at our power sector reform program threadbare, and when we looked at and when we proved to them that we are serious and that's all the work we are doing, Pakistan should be proud of the fact that last week I was able to secure this entire $2.5 billion over the next 2 years only. So everything will be spent in the next 2 years at concessional financing rates, which hardly cost the country anything. So there would be no new IPPs being created on the transmission side, and Pakistan would be able to do it in a much more sustainable and cost-effective manner.
वज़ीर तवानाई सरदार अवैस लगारी का तकरीब से खिताब आपने मुलाहिजा किया। उन्होंने कहा कि IPPs के मसले को खुशउस्लूबी से हल किया जाएगा। मुस्तकबिल की तवानाई ज़रूरियात पूरी करने के लिए बेहतर मनसूबाबंदी कर रहे हैं। तवानाई का शोबा मईशत की तरक्की में अहम किरदार अदा करता है। तवानाई के शोबे में इस्लाहात जारी हैं। उन्होंने कहा कि बिजली तकसीम और तरसील के निज़ाम को भी जदीद खतूत पर उस्तवार किया जा रहा है। मज़ीद उनका कहना था कि मुल्क में माहौल दोस्त तवानाई को फ़रोग़ दिया जा रहा है। आइंदा 2 साल में 17,000 मेगावाट बिजली भी सिस्टम में शामिल की जाएगी। पाकिस्तान टेलीविजन न्यूज़ से ये थी अब तक की ताज़ा तरीन।
پاکستان کی داستان، اس کے لیے کی گئی جدوجہد اور اس کا حصول رہتی دنیا تک انسانوں کے لیے رہنما رہے گی کہ کس طرح عظیم مشکلات سے نبرد آزما ہوا جاتا ہے۔
ڈینگی بخار سے بچاؤ کے لیے احتیاط لازم۔ اپنے گھر اور دفاتر کو مچھروں سے محفوظ رکھیں۔ دروازوں اور کھڑکیوں پر جالیاں لگائیں۔ چھتوں کی ٹینکیوں اور پانی سے بھرے برتنوں کو ڈھانپ کر رکھیں۔ شام اور صبح کے اوقات میں خصوصی احتیاط کریں۔ پوری آستینوں والے کپڑے پہنیں۔ مچھروں سے بچاؤ کے لیے مچھردانی اور لوشن کا استعمال کریں۔ اگر کمر درد، سر درد یا جوڑوں میں درد، جسم پر دھبوں کی موجودگی، بخار یا اس سے ملتی جلتی علامات محسوس ہوں تو فوراً معالج سے رجوع کریں۔ محتاط رہیں، محفوظ رہیں۔ انفرادی نہیں، اجتماعی کاوش ہی قوم کو کامیابی سے ہمکنار کرتی ہے۔ اس سے پہلے کہ پولیو ہمارے بچوں کو عمر بھر کے لیے معذور بنا دے، انہیں پولیو کے قطرے ضرور پلوائیں۔ محکمہ صحت کی ٹیموں سے تعاون کرتے ہوئے ذمہ دار شہری ہونے کا ثبوت دیں، کیونکہ صحت مند بچے ہی کل کے روشن مستقبل کی ضمانت ہیں۔ پولیو سے پاک پاکستان، ہر بچے کے لیے۔
میں تمام محترم اراکین کابینہ کو سرکاری جو ہمارے اہلکار ان سب کو خوش آمدید کہتا ہوں، اور آج کی کارروائی کو آگے بڑھانے سے پہلے میں چودھری حسن اقبال صاحب کو گزارش کروں گا کہ جو ہمارے حالیہ دنوں میں جو پولیس کے اور فوج کے جوان جو شہید ہوئے ہیں مختلف دہشت گردی کے واقعات میں، ان کے لیے دعا کے لیے ہاتھ اٹھائے جائیں۔